The Galactic Council sat in their grand chamber, high above the shimmering capital city of Zalthor Prime. Beings from 1,000 worlds filled the circular room, each more alien than the last. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others lurked in dark corners, while a few seemed to exist as pure energy. At the center of it all stood High Counselor Vexarian, his 7 eyes narrowed in concentration. Order. We must have order. Vexarian's voice boomed, silencing the chattering delegates. We are here to discuss the human problem. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the blue-green world of Earth spinning slowly. Murmurs of disgust rippled through the chamber. These humans, Vexarian spat the word, have become a threat to galactic stability. Their technology advances at an alarming rate. Their population explodes unchecked. And now, they dare to expand beyond their pitiful solar system. Ambassador Zyklera, a being of living crystal, chimed in. But surely, High Counselor, they pose no immediate threat. They have barely mastered faster than light travel. Vexarian's tentacles writhed in agitation. You fool, don't you see? It's not what they are now, it's what they will become. The hologram changed, showing projections of human expansion. Red lines spread like a virus across the galaxy, engulfing world after world. Our best analysts predict that within a mere 500 years, humans will dominate half the known galaxy, Vexarian continued. Their adaptability, their drive, their sheer stubbornness, it makes them dangerous. General Krogath, a hulking reptilian creature, stomped his foot in agreement. We should crush them now, while they're weak. My armada stands ready to glass their entire world. A wave of approval swept through the chamber, but not everyone was convinced. Ambassador Tileri, a being of pure light, pulsed with concern. Have we not learned from the mistakes of the past? Remember the Zinthar genocide. Millions dead. For what? Fear. Vexarian's eyes swiveled towards Tileri. Your concern is noted, Ambassador, but this is different. The humans are not like the peaceful Zinthar. They are warriors, conquerors at heart. Given the chance, they would subjugate us all. The council erupted into heated debate. Some argued for diplomacy, others for containment. But as the hours wore on, a grim consensus began to form. Vexarian called for a vote. Those in favor of immediate action against the human threat, raise your appendages. Slowly, tentacles, claws, and energy tendrils rose throughout the chamber. Tilari and a few others remained still, their silence a final futile protest. It is decided then, Vexarian announced, his voice heavy with false regret. For the safety of the galaxy, humanity must be culled. General Krogath's eyes gleamed with bloodlust. How many shall we eliminate, High Counselor? Vexarian paused, considering. Enough to break their spirit, to send a message they will never forget. Let us reduce their numbers by half. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even among those who had voted for action, the scale of the proposed slaughter was shocking. Surely that's too much, Zyklera protested. Billions will die. Billions will live, Vexarian countered. And those who survive will know their place in the galaxy. They will abandon their dreams of expansion, turning inward to lick their wounds. It is regrettable, but necessary. As the council filed out, making preparations for the coming massacre, only Tileri remained. Her light dimmed with sorrow as she whispered, "What have we done? We know nothing of these humans, of their true nature. This decision, it will doom us all." But her words fell on empty air. The machinery of genocide was already grinding into motion. Fleets were assembled, terrible weapons primed. And on the blue-green world below, blissfully unaware of the hammer about to fall, humanity went about its day. They had no idea that in just a few short hours, their world would be forever changed. That the actions of a fearful council would awaken a fury unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The clock was ticking. Humanity's greatest trial, and its greatest triumph, was about to begin. The sky over Earth turned red that day, not the soft red of a sunset, but the angry crimson of spilled blood. Massive ships, each the size of a small country, appeared out of nowhere. They hung in the air like dark clouds, casting long shadows over terrified cities. Sarah Johnson, a young teacher in New York, looked up from her classroom window. Her students huddled around her, their small faces pale with fear. "Miss Johnson, what are those things?" Little Tawny asked, his voice shaking. Before Sarah could answer, the world exploded. Beams of sickly green light shot from the alien ships. Where they touched, buildings crumbled, roads melted, and people simply vanished. Screams filled the air as millions tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. In London, Big Ben chimed its last as a blast tore through the ancient clock tower. The Thames boiled, steam rising in great clouds that choked the fleeing crowds. Prime Minister Helena Scott stood in 10 Downing Street, her fists clenched in helpless rage. "Get me the bloody army, now," she shouted, but the phones were dead. All communication was cut off. Halfway across the world, the Great Wall of China offered no protection. The marvel that had stood for centuries was reduced to dust in seconds. In the nearby villages, farmers looked up from their fields, eyes wide with disbelief as death rained from the sky. But humanity didn't go down without a fight. In Washington, D.C., General Mike Hawkins barked orders from the Pentagon's war room. "Launch everything we've got," he commanded. Missiles streaked upwards. Fighters took to the skies. For a moment, hope flared. It didn't last long. The alien ships shrugged off Earth's mightiest weapons like they were nothing more than annoying flies. One by one, the fighters winked out of existence. The missiles exploded harmlessly against advanced shields. "My God," Hawkins whispered, watching the disaster unfold on giant screens. "What have we done to deserve this?" In the streets of Rio de Janeiro, carnival dancer Maria Souza ran for her life. Her bright costume, once a source of joy, now made her an easy target. She ducked into an alley, tears streaming down her face. A group of children huddled there, orphaned in the chaos. Without hesitation, Maria gathered them close. "Stay quiet, little ones," she whispered. "We'll get through this." As the hours passed, the scale of the devastation became clear. Great cities lay in ruins. Forests burned. The oceans churned with unnatural storms. And everywhere, people died. But not everyone. In the Australian outback, Aboriginal elder Uncle Jack watched the sky with ancient, knowing eyes. He gathered his people into sacred caves, deep in the red earth. "This land has protected us for 60,000 years, he said. "It will protect us again." High in the Andes, Incan descendants retreated to hidden mountain valleys, their knowledge of secret paths saving thousands. In the deep forests of Africa, tribes melted into the jungle, becoming one with the shadows. And in places least expected, heroes emerge. In a small town in Kansas, Sheriff John Baker organized a resistance. Armed with nothing more than hunting rifles and determination, they managed to bring down a small alien scout ship. The crash technology would later prove crucial. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, working in her lab in Tokyo, refused to abandon her research even as the city crumbled around her. Her work on experimental shield technology would become the foundation for humanity's future defenses. As night fell on that terrible first day, the alien ships finally ceased their attack. They hung in the sky, silent and menacing, as if admiring their handiwork. The earth, once blue and green and full of life, now looked like a charred cinder. But in hidden places, in bunkers and caves, in forests and mountains, survivors huddled together. They nursed their wounds, mourned their dead, and whispered questions no one could answer. Why had this happened? What had humanity done to deserve such cruelty? And in those dark hours, something new was born. It wasn't just fear or sorrow. It was rage. A deep, burning fury that spread from heart to heart. The aliens had tried to break humanity's spirit. Instead, They had forged it into steel. As dawn broke on a changed world, the survivors looked to the sky with new eyes. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Humanity had been knocked down, but it wasn't out. Not by a long shot. The aliens thought they had won. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The world woke up to a nightmare. As the dust settled and the fires dimmed, the true scale of the disaster became clear. Half of humanity, gone in a single day. Cities reduced to ash. Entire countries wiped off the map. Those who survived wandered in a daze, unable to process what had happened. In the ruins of Paris, Marie Dubois stumbled through the empty streets. The Eiffel Tower, once proud and tall, now lay twisted and broken. She called out for her family, her voice echoing in the eerie silence. Pierre, Sophie. But only the wind answered. Across the ocean, in the scorched remains of New York, firefighter Jake Rodriguez dug through rubble with his bare hands. His team was gone, his equipment destroyed, but still he searched, hoping against hope to find survivors. As he lifted a heavy beam, he heard a faint cry. A child, no more than 5, reached out to him. Jake's eyes filled with tears as he gently lifted the boy. "It's okay, kid," he whispered. "I've got you." In Beijing, Lai Wei sat in front of a cracked TV screen, desperately flipping through channels. Static, static, and more static. No news, no information, nothing but the endless hiss of dead air. He threw the remote in frustration. How? He shouted to the empty room. How could this happen? The question echoed around the globe. How? Why? What had humanity done to deserve this? In underground bunkers and hidden command centers, the few surviving world leaders tried to make sense of the chaos. U.S. President Sarah Mitchell, her face ashen and clothes covered in dust, addressed a shaken nation from a secret location. "My fellow Americans," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Today we face the greatest challenge in human history. We have been attacked, brutally and without warning, by forces beyond our understanding. But we will not break. We will not bow. We are Americans, we are humans, and we will survive." Her words, broadcast on emergency frequencies, reached survivors huddled around battery-powered radios. Some cried, some cheered, but most just listened in stunned silence, still struggling to believe this wasn't all some terrible dream. In Geneva, the remains of the United Nations gathered in an emergency session. Representatives from countries that had been bitter enemies just days ago now sat side by side, united in grief and shock. "We must respond," thundered the Russian ambassador, his fist pounding the table. "We must show these aliens that humanity will not go quietly into the night." "With what?" The Chinese delegate shot back. "Our militaries are in ruins. Our cities are gone. What can we possibly do against such power?" As the debate raged, Dr. Emma Pearson, a renowned astrophysicist, stepped up to the podium. Her lab coat was torn, her hair singed, but her eyes burned with intensity. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, "I know you're afraid. We all are. But we don't have time for fear or for fighting amongst ourselves. I've been analyzing the alien technology from the downed scout ship in Kansas, and I can tell you this: they're not invincible." A murmur ran through the crowd. Emma continued, her words picking up speed. "Their weapons are advanced, yes, but not incomprehensible. Their shields have weaknesses. Their tactics can be countered, but only if we work together, only if we pool our knowledge, our resources, our very will to survive." As Emma spoke, something changed in the room. Backs straightened, jaws set with determination. The shock and disbelief began to give way to something else, a fierce, burning resolve. Meanwhile, in a small town in India, a group of survivors gathered around a makeshift memorial. Candles flickered in the twilight as names of the lost were read out. Tears flowed freely, but there was something else too. Hands clasped together, regardless of caste or creed. Old grudges forgotten in the face of a common enemy. As night fell once more, humanity began to stir. In hidden labs, scientists pored over alien technology, seeking weaknesses. In secret bases, soldiers trained with new purpose. In fields and factories, people began to rebuild, to prepare. The aliens had sought to break humanity's spirit. Instead, they had forged it into something stronger. The shock was wearing off. Disbelief was turning to determination. And deep in the heart of every survivor, a fire was kindling. The aliens thought they had won. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the shadows of a ruined world, hope began to flicker. Like tiny flames in the darkness, acts of defiance and bravery started to appear across the globe. The spark of resistance had been lit, and it was about to burst into a raging inferno. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, Maria Oliveira, a former eco-warrior, gathered a group of survivors. "We know these jungles better than anyone," she said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "The aliens can't track us here. We'll strike from the shadows and disappear like ghosts." Her team moved silently through the dense undergrowth, using blow darts tipped with a potent neurotoxin extracted from native plants. When a small alien patrol landed to investigate an anomaly, they never saw the attack coming. Within minutes, the aliens lay paralyzed, their advanced technology now in human hands. Halfway across the world, in the war-torn streets of Moscow, ex-HFY agent Nikolai Volkov led a daring raid on an alien outpost. His team moved with practiced precision, using their knowledge of the city's secret tunnels to outmaneuver the invaders. "For Russia, for Earth," Nikolai shouted as they breached the alien defenses. The fight was brutal and close quarters, but human determination proved stronger than alien technology. As the dust settled, Nikolai stood over the fallen enemies, a captured alien weapon humming in his hands. "Let's see how they like a taste of their own medicine," he growled. In the skies above what was once London, Royal Air Force pilot Sarah Collins gritted her teeth as she pushed her experimental aircraft to its limits. The plane, a hybrid of human and reverse-engineered alien tech, screamed through the air at impossible speeds. "Fox 2, Fox 2. Sarah called out as she launched a modified missile at the underbelly of an alien ship. The projectile, enhanced with scavenged alien energy cells, punched through the ship's shields like they were paper. The massive craft listed to one side before crashing into the Thames in a spectacular explosion. As Sarah's squadron cheered over the radio, she allowed herself a grim smile. "That's for my family, you bastards," she whispered. Meanwhile, in a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Silicon Valley, a group of hackers and tech geniuses worked tirelessly. Led by Raj Patel, a former Google engineer, they had managed to crack a portion of the alien communication codes. "We're in," Raj shouted, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Uploading the virus. Now." On screens around the room, alien systems began to flicker and fail. Ships lost power, weapons misfired, and chaos spread through the invaders' ranks. But the resistance wasn't just about fighting. In the Australian outback, Dr. Emily Chen worked day and night in a makeshift lab. Using data from captured alien tech and her own brilliant mind, she was on the verge of a breakthrough. "It's their biology," she explained to a group of anxious onlookers. "They're not adapted to Earth's bacteria. With the right modifications, we could turn the common cold into their worst nightmare." As word of these successes spread, more and more people joined the fight. Farmers rigged their fields with traps that could bring down alien shuttles. Teachers turned their knowledge of chemistry into makeshift explosive factories. Even children played their part, their small size allowing them to slip past alien sensors and gather crucial intelligence. In Geneva, the United Earth Resistance Council convened its first official meeting. Representatives from every surviving nation gathered to share information and coordinate their efforts. "We may have lost the first battle," General Miguel Sanchez of Mexico declared, "but the war has only just begun. Humanity will not go quietly into the night. We will fight, we will survive, and we will win. The council chamber erupted in cheers and applause. For the first time since the attack, real hope began to spread. But even as humanity celebrated these small victories, the alien council watched from their orbiting ships with growing concern. What they had intended as a simple culling had instead awakened a sleeping giant. They had expected surrender, or at least compliance. Instead, they faced a species that refused to be broken. High Counselor Vexarian's tentacles writhed in agitation as he reviewed the reports. "Impossible," he muttered. "How can they still fight? How can they even stand against us?" What Vexarian and his kind failed to understand was the indomitable spirit of humanity. They had awoken a fury unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. And this was only the beginning. The spark of resistance had been lit. Soon, it would engulf the stars themselves. As the dust of initial battles settled, a new era of human cooperation dawned. Old enemies became allies, and borders that once divided now united. The world had changed, and humanity changed with it. In the heart of what was once the United Nations building in New York, now a fortified bunker, leaders from around the world gathered. The room buzzed with a mix of languages, but for once, there was no need for translators. Everyone understood the language of survival. "We stand together, or we fall alone," declared Chen Wei, the Chinese representative. Her words were met with nods of agreement from those who, just months ago, would have been her political opponents. President Sarah Mitchell of the United States stood up, her face etched with determination. "We've been given a second chance," she said, "not just as nations, but as a species. We can't waste it fighting among ourselves." In that moment, the United Earth Defense Force was born. A global army, united under a single banner, the blue and green flag of Earth. Meanwhile, in laboratories across the world, scientists worked tirelessly. In a repurposed automotive factory in Detroit, Dr. Aisha Patel led a team in developing new armor. "The aliens' weapons are energy-based," she explained, holding up a shimmering material. "This polymer absorbs and redistributes that energy. It won't make our soldiers invincible, but it'll give them a fighting chance." Across the ocean, in a hidden facility beneath the Swiss Alps, weapons development took on a new urgency. Hans Müller, a soft-spoken engineer, presented his latest creation to a group of awestruck military officials. "We call it the Thunderbolt," he said, unveiling a massive cannon. "It uses electromagnetic principles to launch projectiles at speeds the aliens can't track. Their shields won't know what hit them." But it wasn't just about weapons and armor. In the Australian outback, a massive array of radio telescopes pointed skyward. Dr. Emily Chen, working with a global team of astronomers, had repurposed the installation for a new mission. "We're mapping their fleet movements," she explained to a visiting general. "Every ship, every transmission. We'll know their plans before they do." Education, too, underwent a radical transformation. Schools around the world adopted a new curriculum, focused on skills needed for the war effort. Children learned advanced mathematics alongside self-defense. Teenagers studied alien biology and tactics. In a classroom in Brazil, young Maria Santos raised her hand. "Teacher," she asked, "why do we need to learn all this? Isn't it the soldier's job to fight?" Her teacher, Mr. Oliveira, smiled sadly. "Maria, in this war, we're all soldiers. Knowledge is our weapon, and the whole world is our battlefield." Even entertainment changed. Movies and video games now focused on simulating alien encounters, training the public in basic survival skills without them even realizing it. In Hollywood, director James Chen put the finishing touches on his latest blockbuster. "It's not just entertainment," he told his crew. "It's preparation. Every person who watches this will be a little more ready when the real fight comes." As humanity prepared, they also reached out. Using reverse-engineered alien tech, they'd broadcast a message to the stars. Not in any human language, but in a universal code of mathematics and physics. The message was simple. "We are here. We will fight, and we are not alone." For days, there was no response. Then, suddenly, a reply came. Not from the alien invaders, but from somewhere else entirely. In a secure room deep beneath Pentagon, cryptographers worked frantically to decode the message. When they finally succeeded, a cheer went up that could be heard throughout the facility. General Mike Hawkins rushed in. "What is it? What does it say?" The lead cryptographer, tears in her eyes, handed him the translation. It read, "Resistance exists. Help is coming. Hold the line." As news of the message spread, a new wave of hope washed over the planet. Humanity was not alone in its fight against the Council. There were others out there, others who had faced the same threat and survived. In orbit, High Counselor Vexarian received the reports with growing alarm. The humans were not breaking. They were not surrendering. Instead, they were uniting, growing stronger. And now, impossibly, they had made contact with the resistance. For the first time in his long life, Vexarian felt a twinge of fear. The humans were supposed to be an easy target, a simple species to subjugate. Instead, they had become the biggest threat the Council had faced in millennia. As the alien ships regrouped for another attack, the people of Earth stood ready, united, prepared, and with a fury that burned hotter than any star. The real war was about to begin. The day humanity had been preparing for finally arrived. As the alien ships descended once more, they found not a broken world, but one ready to fight back. General Sarah Collins stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Earth's first space-worthy battleship. Built in secret using reverse-engineered alien tech, it was humanity's ace in the hole. "All stations, report," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "Weapons hot, shields at maximum," came the reply from Tactical. Sarah took a deep breath. "Then let's go introduce ourselves properly to our uninvited guests." Across the globe, Operation Thunderstrike began. In every major city, hidden defense systems sprang to life. In New York, the Statue of Liberty's torch suddenly glowed with energy, firing a beam that cut an alien cruiser in half. In Cairo, the pyramids opened to reveal massive ion cannons. The aliens, caught off guard by weapons emerging from what they thought were simple monuments, fell by the dozens. But the real surprise came from under the oceans. Submarines retrofitted with alien tech launched devastating attacks from below. The aliens, focused on the land and air, never saw it coming. In Beijing, Dr. Lai Wei activated the quantum communication network he'd been developing. Suddenly, every human fighter could coordinate in real time, their movements perfectly synchronized. "For too long, we've been reacting," Lai said to the global command. "Now we predict their every move before they make it." The tide of battle began to turn. Human fighters, once easy prey, now danced between alien ships, their moves unpredictable and deadly. In orbit, the U.S. Defiant engaged the alien flagship. Sarah's voice rang out clear and determined. "Fire the Excalibur." A beam of pure energy, harnessing the power of a miniature star, lanced out from the Defiant. It struck the alien ship, cutting through its shields like they were paper. On the alien bridge, High Counselor Vexarian watched in disbelief as systems failed around him. "Impossible," he muttered. "They were savages just months ago. How could they?" His words were cut short as the ship's hull breached, exposing him to the cold vacuum of space. Back on Earth, the ground war raged. In the ruins of London, Major John Blake led a squad armed with the new phase shift technology. They moved through solid walls, appearing inside alien strongholds and wreaking havoc. "Remember Rio," John shouted as they fought, referring to the massacre that had claimed his family. His men echoed the cry, each with their own losses dragging them forward. In the skies over what was once Tokyo, ace pilot Yuki Tanaka flew her Nano Swarm fighter. The plane could split into thousands of tiny drones, overwhelming alien defenses before reforming into a single craft. "This is for my home," Yuki said quietly as she decimated an entire alien squadron single-handedly. But the aliens weren't going down without a fight. They launched a desperate attack on the human command center in Geneva. For a moment, it seemed like all might be lost. Then, just as hope began to fade, the sky lit up with new energy signatures. The message from space had been true. Help had arrived. Sleek ships, of designs humans had never seen, descended from the clouds. They engaged the alien forces with weapons beyond even the Council's understanding. A transmission came through on all frequencies. People of Earth, we are the galactic resistance. We stand with you against the Council's tyranny. A cheer went up from every human fighter. They weren't alone in the universe, and more importantly, they were winning. As the battle reached its peak, Sarah Collins made a decision. All ships, focus fire on their command ship. Let's end this here and now. Every human weapon, joined by their new allies, converged on a single point. The alien command ship, the heart of their invasion force, couldn't withstand the assault. It erupted in an explosion so bright it turned night to day for a brief moment. As the light faded, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Then, one by one, the remaining alien ships began to retreat. On screens around the world, humans watched in disbelief as the invaders fled. Then, slowly, the realization dawned. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had won. The cheers started small at first, a few voices here and there. But soon, they swelled into a roar that could be heard from space. It was a sound of triumph, of survival, of a species that refused to be extinguished. As the sun rose on a battered but free Earth, humanity looked to the stars with new eyes. They had faced their greatest challenge and emerged victorious. The galaxy would never be the same again. And somewhere out there, the Council trembled. They had intended to cull a species. Instead, they had created their own worst nightmare. Humanity was coming, and the stars themselves would tremble. 5 years had passed since the day Earth repelled the alien invasion. The planet, once ravaged by war, now bustled with activity. But humanity's gaze was no longer confined to their home world. Their eyes and their ambitions were fixed on the stars. In the orbital shipyards above Earth, Sarah Collins, now Admiral of the United Earth Fleet, watched as the final touches were put on humanity's newest vessel. The UES Phoenix, a ship that dwarfed even the alien dreadnoughts, represented the pinnacle of human and alien technology. "It's time," Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's future. "We've defended our home. Now we take the fight to them." Across the galaxy, word spread of the new species that had not only survived the Council's culling but had driven them back. Some whispered in fear, others in awe. But all knew. The balance of power had shifted. On a distant world, refugees from a dozen species gathered around a holographic display. They watched as a fleet of ships, bearing the blue and green flag of Earth, jumped into their system. "Have they come to conquer us too?" a young alien asked, fear trembling in its voice. The leader, a grizzled veteran of many battles, shook his head. "No, little one. They've come to liberate us." As the human fleet spread across the stars, they didn't come as conquerors, but as liberators. Planets that had suffered under the Council's tyranny for millennia found themselves free for the first time in living memory. But it wasn't all battles and warfare. On Earth, Dr. Emily Chen made a breakthrough that would change the course of galactic history. "We've cracked it," she announced to a room full of scientists and leaders. "The Council's immortality tech, but we've improved it, made it available to all, not just the elite." The implications were staggering. Humanity could now offer something even the Council couldn't. A chance at eternal life for all sentient beings, not just the chosen few. As news of this discovery spread, more and more alien races flocked to the human banner. The galactic resistance, once a scattered group of rebels, became a force that could challenge the Council's supremacy. High above the Council's homeworld, the final battle loomed. The UES Phoenix, flanked by ships from 100 allied species, faced down the last of the Council's fleet. Inside the Phoenix, Admiral Sarah Collins stood before a united bridge crew, humans working alongside aliens of all shapes and sizes. "This isn't just for Earth," Sarah said, her voice carrying to every ship in the fleet. "This is for every world they've terrorized, every species they've tried to exterminate. Today, we end their reign once and for all." The battle that followed would be sung about in 1,000 languages across 1,000,000 worlds for eons to come. The Council's technology, once thought unbeatable, crumbled before the combined might of a united galaxy. As the last of the Council's ships fell, a cheer went up that seemed to shake the very stars. Centuries of oppression had ended in a single day. In the aftermath, as the dust of destroyed ships drifted through space, humanity faced a new challenge: peace. On Earth, in the rebuilt United Nations building, representatives from across the galaxy gathered. The room hummed with translator devices as 1,000 different species tried to forge a new future together. "We stand at a crossroads," President Chen Wei, now leader of the United Earth government, addressed the assembly. "We've won our freedom. Now we must decide what to do with it." The debate that followed was long and often heated. Some called for the complete dismantling of the Council's empire. Others argued for reform rather than destruction. In the end, it was an old Aboriginal elder from Australia who offered a way forward. "For 60,000 years, my people lived in harmony with our world," he said, his weathered voice carrying wisdom from Earth's ancient past. "Now we must learn to live in harmony with our galaxy." His words struck a chord. Slowly, a new galactic society began to take shape, one built not on domination and fear, but on cooperation and mutual respect. As the new galactic alliance took its first tentative steps, humanity found itself in an unexpected position. Leaders of a new age. They had entered the galactic stage as victims, become warriors out of necessity, and emerged as pioneers of a new era. Far from Earth, on a small blue-green planet, much like humanity's home, a young alien child looked up at the night sky. "Tell me again," she asked her parent, "the story of the humans." The parent smiled, pointing to a bright star. "It began with a terrible attack," they said, "but it ended with hope. The humans taught us all that the greatest power in the universe isn't technology or weapons. It's the unyielding fury of those who fight for what's right." The child's eyes widened with wonder. In that moment, as it had on countless worlds, humanity's legacy sparked a new dream in a young heart. The story of Earth would inspire generations across the galaxy for millennia to come.